Question 1. Strategic planning requires a thorough evaluation of new IBM Lotus Notes and Domino 8. 5 features to ensure compliance with data privacy regulations. When considering the implementation of a new feature that might affect how user data is accessed or processed, what is the most critical initial step to ensure regulatory adherence? Option A. Conduct a detailed impact assessment focusing on how the feature interacts with user data and existing access controls to identify potential privacy risks. Option B. Proceed with the implementation if the feature offers significant functional advantages, assuming existing security measures are adequate. Option C. Obtain user consent for any potential changes in data handling, even if the changes are minor. Option D. Rely on general IT security best practices to safeguard data, without a specific review of privacy implications. Correct answer is A. Conduct a detailed impact assessment focusing on how the feature interacts with user data and existing access controls to identify potential privacy risks. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT project management, balancing the need for robust system functionality with the imperative to comply with data privacy regulations. The core tension lies in the potential for a new Lotus Notes and Domino 8. 5 feature to inadvertently expose sensitive user data, which could lead to significant legal penalties and reputational damage. The professional challenge is to proactively identify and mitigate these risks before deployment, ensuring that the implementation aligns with both business objectives and regulatory requirements. This requires a thorough understanding of the proposed feature's technical implications and its potential impact on data handling practices. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves conducting a comprehensive impact assessment that specifically evaluates the proposed feature's interaction with existing data structures and user access controls within the Lotus Notes and Domino 8. 5. Environment. This assessment must consider how the feature might alter data flow, storage, or visibility, and critically, whether these changes could lead to unauthorized access or disclosure of personal information. By focusing on the specific technical implementation and its potential data privacy implications, this approach directly addresses the requirements of data protection regulations. It ensures that any potential compliance gaps are identified early, allowing for remediation before deployment. This proactive stance is the cornerstone of responsible data stewardship and regulatory adherence. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to proceed with the feature's implementation based solely on its perceived functional benefits without a dedicated impact assessment. This ignores the fundamental principle of privacy by design, which mandates that data protection considerations are integrated from the outset of any new system or feature development. Such an oversight is a direct violation of data protection principles, as it prioritizes functionality over the safeguarding of personal data. Another incorrect approach is to rely on general IT security best practices without a specific focus on data privacy implications. While general security measures are important, they may not adequately address the nuanced requirements of data protection regulations, which often mandate specific controls around the collection, processing, and disclosure of personal information. This approach risks overlooking critical privacy vulnerabilities that are not covered by broader security protocols. A third incorrect approach is to assume that existing data access controls are sufficient without verifying their applicability to the new feature. New functionalities can create unforeseen pathways for data access or modify existing permissions in ways that are not immediately apparent. Failing to reevaluate these controls in the context of the new feature is a significant risk that can lead to data breaches and regulatory noncompliance. Professional reasoning. Professionals tasked with implementing new features in IBM Lotus Notes and Domino 8. 5 must adopt a risk-based approach that prioritizes data privacy. The decision-making process should begin with a clear understanding of the regulatory landscape governing data protection. For any implementation, a detailed impact assessment should be performed, specifically examining how the new feature will affect the handling of personal data. This assessment should involve relevant stakeholders, including data protection officers or legal counsel, to ensure all compliance aspects are considered. If potential risks are identified, mitigation strategies must be developed and implemented before the feature goes live. This iterative process of assessment, mitigation, and verification is crucial for maintaining compliance and protecting user data. Question 2. Market research demonstrates that organizations are increasingly adopting IBM Lotus Notes and Domino 8.5 for its robust collaboration and data management capabilities. When planning to implement a new configuration for a Domino 8.5 server that involves changes to database access controls and mail routing policies, what is the most critical step to ensure compliance with data protection regulations? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment that meticulously documents how the proposed configuration changes will affect the handling, storage, and transmission of all data types, cross-referencing these with relevant data protection mandates. Option B. Assume that existing internal security policies are adequate and do not require specific review in light of the new configuration. Option C. Perform a quick review of the changes to ensure basic security features like password complexity are enabled, without a detailed analysis of data flow. Option D. Rely on the default security settings provided by IBM Lotus Notes and Domino 8.5, assuming they are sufficient for all regulatory requirements. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment that meticulously documents how the proposed configuration changes will affect the handling, storage, and transmission of all data types, cross-referencing these with relevant data protection mandates. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT project management, balancing the need for robust system functionality with the imperative to comply with established regulatory frameworks. The core difficulty lies in accurately assessing the impact of a new Domino 8.5 configuration on existing data privacy and security protocols, which are governed by specific, though unstated for this exam's purpose, regulatory guidelines. A thorough impact assessment is crucial to identify potential conflicts, vulnerabilities, and necessary adjustments before deployment, thereby mitigating risks of non-compliance and operational disruption. The correct approach involves a systematic and documented process of evaluating the proposed changes against all relevant regulatory requirements. This includes identifying all data types handled by the Domino server, understanding how the new configuration will process, store, and transmit this data, and cross-referencing these operations with specific data protection mandates. This proactive, evidence-based methodology ensures that the implementation aligns with legal and ethical obligations, safeguarding sensitive information and maintaining organizational integrity. It represents best professional practice because it prioritizes risk mitigation and compliance, demonstrating due diligence and a commitment to responsible system management. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the configuration without a formal impact assessment. This failure to evaluate the regulatory implications of the changes constitutes a significant ethical and potentially legal lapse, demonstrates a disregard for data privacy and security mandates, exposing the organization to risks of data breaches, regulatory penalties, and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach would be to conduct a superficial assessment that only considers obvious security features, ignoring subtler data handling aspects or specific regulatory clauses. This incomplete analysis would lead to unforeseen compliance issues and potential violations, as it fails to capture the full scope of the impact. A third incorrect approach might involve relying solely on vendor documentation without independent verification against specific organizational regulatory obligations, which is insufficient as vendor guidance may not fully address the unique compliance landscape of the deploying organization. Professionals should approach such situations by first identifying all applicable regulatory frameworks. Then they must meticulously document the proposed system changes and their intended functionalities. The next step is to conduct a detailed impact analysis, mapping each change against specific regulatory requirements, identifying potential risks and compliance gaps. Finally, a remediation plan should be developed and implemented to address any identified issues before proceeding with the deployment. This structured decision-making process ensures that technical implementations are always grounded in regulatory and ethical considerations. Question 3. Compliance review shows that a critical IBM Lotus Domino 8.5 server requires an urgent security patch. The administrator is aware of the patch's importance but has not yet evaluated its potential impact on existing applications, user access, or data integrity. What is the most appropriate next step? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment to identify all potential consequences of applying the patch before proceeding. Option B. Proceed with the patch application, focusing only on the technical installation and verification of the patch itself. Option C. Inform users about the upcoming patch and schedule the installation for the next available maintenance window without further analysis. Option D. Immediately apply the security patch to the Domino server to address the vulnerability. The correct answer is D. Immediately apply the security patch to the Domino server to address the vulnerability. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT administration where a critical system upgrade is planned. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for system improvement and security patching with the potential disruption to business operations and the risk of data loss or corruption. The requirement to adhere strictly to the C2040-925 exams implied regulatory framework, which, for the purpose of this exam, we will assume aligns with general best practices for data security and system integrity in a corporate environment, without referencing specific external regulations beyond the exam scope, necessitates a methodical and risk-aware approach. The pressure to implement changes quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise compliance and operational stability. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves conducting a thorough impact assessment before proceeding with the upgrade. This assessment should identify all potential dependencies, affected users, critical business processes, and data integrity risks. It requires documenting the findings, developing a rollback plan, and obtaining formal approval from stakeholders. This aligns with best practices for system administration and change management, ensuring that potential negative consequences are understood and mitigated. The focus is on proactive risk management and informed decision-making, which are implicitly required by the need to install and configure systems reliably and securely as per the exam's objectives. Incorrect approaches analysis. Proceeding with the upgrade without a formal impact assessment is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It demonstrates a disregard for potential business disruption and data integrity, which are core responsibilities of an administrator. This approach bypasses essential risk management protocols, potentially leading to system downtime, data loss, and non-compliance with internal policies or implicit industry standards for system stability. Implementing the upgrade immediately after applying the patch, without considering the broader system implications or user impact, is also a failure. This reactive approach prioritizes speed over thoroughness and can lead to unforeseen issues that are more difficult and costly to resolve. It neglects the interconnected nature of IT systems and the importance of understanding how changes in one area might affect others. Focusing solely on the technical aspects of the patch and ignoring potential user workflow disruptions or data access issues represents an incomplete assessment. While technical correctness is important, the operational impact on users and business processes is equally critical for successful system deployment and maintenance. This narrow focus can lead to user dissatisfaction and reduced productivity, undermining the overall value of the upgrade. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured change management process. This begins with understanding the proposed change, followed by a comprehensive impact assessment that considers technical, operational, and business implications. Documenting risks, developing mitigation strategies, and creating rollback plans are crucial steps. Obtaining stakeholder buy-in and communicating effectively are also vital. This systematic approach ensures that changes are implemented responsibly, minimizing risk and maximizing the benefits of system upgrades. Question 4. Comparative studies suggest that when a critical security vulnerability is identified in IBM Lotus Domino 8.5, an immediate full deployment of a patch could potentially disrupt core business operations. An administrator must decide on the most prudent course of action. Considering the need to balance security with operational continuity, which approach best exemplifies professional responsibility and effective system management? Option A. Immediately deploy the security patch to all Domino servers to ensure the vulnerability is addressed as quickly as possible. Option B. Roll back any recent changes to the Domino environment to revert to a known stable state before considering the patch. Option C. Deploy the security patch to a pilot group of users and servers first, monitor for any adverse effects, and then proceed with a wider rollout if successful. Option D. Defer the patch deployment indefinitely until a less disruptive time can be identified, prioritizing current operational stability. The correct answer is C. Deploy the security patch to a pilot group of users and servers first, monitor for any adverse effects, and then proceed with a wider rollout if successful. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT administration, balancing the need for robust security with the operational requirements of user access and data integrity. The administrator must make a decision that impacts system performance, data accessibility, and compliance with potential security policies, all without direct guidance from higher authority. The challenge lies in interpreting the implications of a security vulnerability and selecting the most appropriate mitigation strategy under pressure and with limited information. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased implementation of security patches, starting with a pilot group. This represents best professional practice because it adheres to a principle of controlled change management, which is implicitly supported by general IT best practices and often by organizational policies that mandate risk mitigation. By testing the patch on a limited set of users and systems, the administrator can identify and resolve any unforeseen compatibility issues or performance degradations before they affect the entire user base. This minimizes disruption to business operations and ensures that the security enhancement does not introduce new problems. This approach also aligns with the principle of least privilege and defense in depth, by addressing the vulnerability without overcompromising accessibility unnecessarily. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing the patch immediately across all servers without testing fails to account for potential negative impacts on system stability and user productivity. This could lead to widespread service disruption, which is professionally unacceptable as it demonstrates a lack of due diligence and risk assessment. It bypasses standard change management procedures designed to prevent such outcomes. Ignoring the vulnerability due to potential disruption is a severe ethical and professional failure. It prioritizes convenience over security, leaving the organization exposed to known risks. This directly contravenes the administrator's responsibility to maintain system integrity and protect sensitive data, potentially leading to data breaches and significant organizational damage. This approach neglects the fundamental duty of care. Rolling back the patch after a negative impact is a reactive measure that indicates a failure in the initial planning and testing phase. While it might mitigate immediate damage, it signifies a poorly executed deployment and a lack of foresight, undermining confidence in the IT department's ability to manage system changes effectively. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making framework when faced with such situations. This framework typically involves 1. Risk assessment. Understand the nature and severity of the vulnerability. 2. Impact analysis. Evaluate the potential consequences of both applying and not applying the patch, considering system stability, user impact, and security posture. 3. Solution evaluation. Identify potential mitigation strategies, including patching, configuration changes, or workarounds. 4. Implementation planning. Develop a phased approach for deploying solutions, including testing and rollback plans. 5. Communication. Inform relevant stakeholders about the risks, planned actions, and potential impacts. 6. Monitoring and verification. Continuously monitor systems after implementation to ensure stability and effectiveness. Question 5. The risk matrix shows a critical vulnerability related to unauthorized access to sensitive user data within the IBM Lotus Domino 8.5 environment, alongside a moderate risk of performance degradation due to outdated server configurations. The administrator has identified several potential actions. Which course of action best aligns with the principles of secure and efficient Domino 8.5 administration? Option A. Focus solely on applying the critical security patches, as this is the most direct way to address the identified vulnerability, and defer other configuration reviews until a later date. Option B. Disable certain security features that are contributing to the performance issues, as user access and system responsiveness are the primary concerns. Option C. Implement a newly released, unverified third-party security plugin that claims to offer enhanced protection against unauthorized access, bypassing standard IBM testing procedures. Option D. Immediately apply all available security patches and then conduct a comprehensive review and hardening of the Domino server's access control lists, ACL, to enforce the principle of least privilege. Correct answer is D. Immediately apply all available security patches and then conduct a comprehensive review and hardening of the Domino server's access control lists, ACL, to enforce the principle of least privilege. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT administration, balancing security imperatives with operational efficiency and user accessibility. The professional challenge lies in interpreting and applying the IBM Lotus notes in Domino 8. 5 security guidelines and best practices, which are implicitly governed by the need to protect sensitive data while ensuring business continuity. A deep understanding of the Domino security model, including access control lists, ACL, encryption, and server hardening, is crucial. The risk matrix highlights potential vulnerabilities, requiring a proactive and informed response. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the identified risks by implementing layered security measures as recommended by IBM's guidelines for Domino 8. 5. This involves not only patching, but also reviewing and strengthening access controls, which is a fundamental aspect of Domino security. By prioritizing the remediation of high-risk vulnerabilities and ensuring that security configurations align with the principle of least privilege, the administrator upholds the integrity and confidentiality of the data stored within the Domino environment. This aligns with the implicit regulatory expectation of due diligence in protecting information assets. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on patching, without addressing ACLs, fails to recognize that vulnerabilities can exist not just in software code, but also in misconfigured access rights, which can be exploited to gain unauthorized access or data exfiltration. This neglects a critical component of the Domino security model and could leave the system exposed. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes user convenience over security by disabling security features or ignoring critical alerts demonstrates a disregard for established security protocols and the potential consequences of a breach. This is ethically unsound and could lead to significant data loss, reputational damage, and potential regulatory noncompliance if data protection laws were applicable to the organization's data. A third incorrect approach that involves implementing untested third-party security solutions without thorough evaluation and integration planning risks introducing new vulnerabilities or system instability. This bypasses the established best practices for deploying security measures within a specific platform like Domino, potentially creating more problems than it solves. The professional decision-making process should involve a systematic risk assessment, followed by the development and implementation of a remediation plan that prioritizes critical vulnerabilities. This plan should be based on established vendor guidelines and security best practices. Regular review and testing of security configurations are essential to maintain a robust security posture. In situations involving security, erring on the side of caution and adhering to documented best practices is paramount. Question 6. The risk matrix shows a moderate risk of unauthorized access to sensitive customer data stored within Lotus Notes databases due to potential weak password policies and insufficient access controls on specific database replicas. What is the most appropriate course of action for the Domino administrator to mitigate this risk, adhering to IBM Lotus Notes and Domino 8? 5 best practices. Option A. Focus on deploying an external firewall to block all external access to the Domino server, assuming this will prevent unauthorized access to the data. Option B. Advise all users to immediately change their passwords to a complex, randomly generated string and disable all database replication until further notice. Option C. Implement a stricter password policy within Domino, enforce regular password changes, and review and refine the access control lists, ACL, for sensitive databases to ensure only necessary users have access. Option D. Remove all user access to sensitive databases and instruct users to submit requests for data access via email to the administrator. The correct answer is C. Implement a stricter password policy within Domino, enforce regular password changes, and review and refine the access control lists, ACL, for sensitive databases to ensure only necessary users have access. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT administration, balancing security requirements with user productivity and system accessibility. The professional challenge lies in interpreting and applying the IBM Lotus Notes and Domino 8. 5 security guidelines and best practices, which are implicitly governed by the need to maintain data integrity and confidentiality without unduly hindering legitimate business operations. Careful judgment is required to ensure that security measures are effective without being overly restrictive or creating unmanageable overhead. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the identified risk of unauthorized access to sensitive data by implementing a layered security strategy. This involves leveraging Domino's built-in security features, such as access control lists, ACL, and encryption, to restrict access to authorized personnel and protect data in transit and at rest. This aligns with the general principles of data protection and access control that are fundamental to secure IT system management, as would be expected within the context of IBM's product guidelines. An incorrect approach that prioritizes immediate user access over security would fail to adequately protect sensitive information, potentially leading to data breaches and non-compliance with internal security policies and any applicable data privacy regulations. Though specific regulations are not cited for this exam, the principles of secure data handling are universal. Another incorrect approach that overimplements security without considering user impact could lead to significant productivity losses, user frustration, and workarounds that bypass intended security controls, ultimately undermining the security posture. A third incorrect approach that relies solely on external security measures without configuring Domino's native security features would leave the system vulnerable to internal threats and misconfigurations. As Domino's security is deeply integrated into its architecture, professionals should approach such situations by first understanding the specific risks identified in the risk matrix. They should then consult the official IBM Lotus notes and Domino 8.5 documentation and best practices for relevant security configurations. A balanced solution involves implementing security controls that are proportionate to the identified risks, considering both technical feasibility and operational impact. This often involves a phased implementation, user training, and ongoing monitoring to ensure effectiveness and adapt to evolving threats. Question 7. System analysis indicates that a growing organization is experiencing challenges with managing user access to various Lotus Notes databases containing sensitive customer information and internal project documentation. New employees require access to specific databases based on their department and role, and existing employees occasionally need access to additional databases as their responsibilities evolve. The current ad hoc method of granting permissions is leading to inconsistencies, potential security gaps, and difficulties in auditing access. The IT administration team needs to implement a more structured and secure approach to manage these access requirements within the IBM Lotus Notes and Domino 8.5 environment. Which of the following approaches best addresses these challenges while adhering to best practices for system security and administration within the specified Lotus Notes/Domino framework? Option A. Manually assign individual user access rights to each database they might need, creating a unique entry in every ACL for each user. Option B. Grant all users who require access to any sensitive database the manager or designer role in the ACLs of those databases to ensure they have sufficient privileges. Option C. Rely on the default everyone access settings in all databases, assuming that users will only access what they need. Option D. Define distinct user roles within the Domino directory, create corresponding access control lists, ACL, for each database that grant permissions based on these defined roles, and ensure users are assigned to the appropriate roles. The correct answer is D. Define distinct user roles within the Domino directory, create corresponding access control lists, ACL, for each database that grant permissions based on these defined roles, and ensure users are assigned to the appropriate roles. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise IT environments, managing user access and data security in a distributed system. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for efficient user onboarding and access, provisioning with the stringent security and compliance requirements inherent in managing sensitive corporate data within a Lotus Notes/Domino environment. The organization's reliance on Domino for critical business functions necessitates a robust and auditable access control strategy. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the core principles of least privilege and role-based access control, which are fundamental to secure system administration and compliance. By establishing clear roles and assigning permissions based on those roles, administrators ensure that users only have access to the information and functions necessary for their job duties. This minimizes the attack surface and reduces the risk of accidental or malicious data exposure. Furthermore, documenting these roles and permissions provides an auditable trail, crucial for demonstrating compliance with internal policies and any relevant regulatory frameworks that might govern data handling. Though for this exam, we focus solely on the technical configuration within the Lotus Notes/Domino framework itself. This systematic approach ensures consistency, reduces errors, and facilitates easier management and review of access rights. An incorrect approach that involves granting broad administrative privileges to all users who require access to specific databases fails to adhere to the principle of least privilege. This creates an unnecessary security risk, as users would have access to more data and functionalities than required, increasing the potential for unauthorized modifications or disclosures. From a configuration and security standpoint within Domino, this is a direct violation of best practices for access control. Another incorrect approach, granting individual access to each user for every database they might potentially need, is inefficient and unmanageable. It leads to a complex web of permissions that is difficult to track, audit, and maintain. This lack of standardization increases the likelihood of misconfigurations and security vulnerabilities. It also hinders the ability to quickly revoke or modify access when an employee's role changes or they leave the organization, creating ongoing security risks. A third incorrect approach, relying solely on the default everyone access in Domino databases, is highly insecure. The everyone group typically has broad permissions, and its use without specific granular restrictions is a significant security lapse. This would expose sensitive data to all authenticated users on the Domino network, regardless of their role or need to know, directly contravening fundamental security principles and making the system highly vulnerable to unauthorized access and data breaches. The professional reasoning process for such situations involves a thorough understanding of the organization's business processes, the sensitivity of the data being managed, and the technical capabilities and security features of the Lotus Notes/Domino environment. Administrators should first identify distinct user roles and their associated data access requirements. Then, they should leverage Domino's security features, such as access control lists, ACL, and directory assistance, to implement role-based access control, regular audits of access permissions, and a clear process for onboarding and offboarding users are essential components of ongoing security management. Question 8. The control framework reveals that the organization is implementing IBM Lotus Notes and Domino 8.5 for internal communication and data management. The Domino directory names NSF contains critical server configuration settings and user access information. A new team of system administrators has been appointed, and the current configuration grants all members of the Domino administrators group full administrative privileges within the Domino directory. The team lead is concerned about the potential for accidental misconfigurations or unauthorized access due to the broad permissions. What is the most secure and professionally sound approach to managing administrative access to the Domino directory in this scenario? Option A. Disable all security checks within the Domino directory to allow administrators unrestricted access and prevent any potential access issues. Option B. Create a separate, less secure Domino directory for administrative tasks that is not linked to the main server configuration. Option C. Grant all members of the Domino administrators group full administrative privileges to simplify management and ensure quick access for all team members. Option D. Define specific roles within the Domino directory, e.g., server administrator, user manager, security officer, and assign administrators to these roles based on their responsibilities, granting only the necessary privileges for each role. Correct answer is D. Define specific roles within the Domino directory, e.g., server administrator, user manager, security officer, and assign administrators to these roles based on their responsibilities, granting only the necessary privileges for each role. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge related to the secure deployment of IBM Lotus Notes and Domino 8.5, specifically concerning the configuration of the Domino directory, names, NSF, and its implications for access control and data integrity. The core of the challenge lies in balancing administrative convenience with robust security practices, ensuring that only authorized personnel can manage critical server settings and user information. The correct approach represents best professional practice, because it adheres to the principle of least privilege, a fundamental tenet of information security. By assigning specific roles within the Domino directory to administrators, rather than granting broad, unrestricted access, it minimizes the attack surface and reduces the risk of accidental or malicious misconfiguration. This aligns with general IT security best practices, which are implicitly expected in the context of installing and configuring enterprise software like Lotus Notes and Domino, even if specific regulations for this exam are not explicitly stated as being from a particular jurisdiction. The focus is on sound security architecture. An incorrect approach that grants full administrative privileges to all members of the Domino administrators group is professionally unacceptable. This violates the principle of least privilege, creating a significant security vulnerability. If any member of this group has their credentials compromised or makes an error, they could inadvertently or intentionally alter critical server configurations, delete user accounts, or expose sensitive data. This lack of granular control is a direct failure in implementing secure system administration. Another incorrect approach, which involves disabling all security checks within the Domino directory to simplify management, is even more egregious. This completely undermines the security posture of the Domino environment, leaving it exposed to unauthorized access and manipulation. It is a direct contravention of the fundamental purpose of security controls and would be considered a severe professional lapse. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a thorough risk assessment. Before implementing any configuration, administrators must consider the potential impact of granting specific access levels. They should consult documentation and follow established security guidelines. The decision-making process should prioritize security and compliance, even if it requires a slightly more complex initial setup. This involves understanding the roles and responsibilities within the organization and mapping them to appropriate access controls within the Domino directory. Question 9. Quality control measures reveal that the primary administrator for a critical IBM Lotus Notes and Domino 8.5 server has been granted full administrative privileges, including the ability to modify all server settings and access all user mail databases. This level of access is not segmented by task or responsibility. What is the most appropriate course of action to enhance security and ensure compliance? Option A. Grant all members of the IT team full administrative access to the server to facilitate collaboration and faster issue resolution. Option B. Implement a granular access control policy, defining specific administrative roles with the least privilege necessary for each task, and assign these roles to administrators based on their job functions. Option C. Revert to the default server installation settings, assuming they are secure enough for general administration. Option D. Maintain the current configuration, as having a single administrator with full access simplifies management and troubleshooting. The correct answer is B. Implement a granular access control policy, defining specific administrative roles with the least privilege necessary for each task, and assign these roles to administrators based on their job functions. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise IT environments where security and compliance are paramount. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need for efficient system administration with the strict requirements of data integrity and access control, particularly when dealing with sensitive user information. The potential for unauthorized access or data corruption necessitates a rigorous approach to configuration management and auditing. Correct approach analysis. Implementing a granular access control policy that restricts administrative privileges to only those necessary for specific tasks is the best professional practice. This aligns with the principle of least privilege, a fundamental security concept. In the context of IBM Lotus Notes and Domino 8.5, this translates to carefully defining roles and ACL, access control list, entries for server administration tasks. This approach minimizes the attack surface by limiting the potential for accidental or malicious misuse of administrative powers. It also facilitates auditing, as it becomes clearer who performed what action and why. This adheres to general IT security best practices and implicitly supports compliance with data protection regulations by ensuring only authorized personnel can modify critical system configurations or access sensitive data. Incorrect approaches analysis. Allowing a single administrator full access to all server configurations and user databases creates a single point of failure and significantly increases the risk of security breaches or accidental data loss. This violates the principle of least privilege and makes auditing extremely difficult, as it's hard to pinpoint responsibility for specific actions. This approach is professionally unacceptable, as it exposes the organization to undue risk and hinders compliance efforts. Granting broad administrative rights to a team without clearly defined responsibilities or task-specific permissions is also problematic. While it might seem efficient for collaboration, it lacks the necessary control and accountability. This can lead to unauthorized changes, data corruption, or security vulnerabilities due to a lack of oversight. It fails to implement proper segregation of duties, a key control mechanism in secure environments. Configuring the server with default administrative settings without reviewing and customizing them is a common oversight that can leave the system vulnerable. Default configurations are often designed for ease of setup rather than optimal security, and may include overly permissive access rights or expose unnecessary services. This approach demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to adhere to security best practices, potentially leading to compliance issues. Professional reasoning. When faced with such a situation, a professional should first assess the current configuration against established security policies and regulatory requirements. The decision-making process should prioritize minimizing risk and ensuring accountability. This involves understanding the specific administrative functions required for the Lotus Notes and Domino environment, and mapping those functions to distinct roles with the minimum necessary privileges. Regular audits and reviews of access controls are crucial to maintain a secure and compliant posture. Question 10. Strategic planning requires a comprehensive approach to designing access controls for a new IBM Lotus Notes and Domino 8.5 application containing sensitive financial data. Which of the following strategies best balances security, compliance, and operational efficiency? Option A. Rely exclusively on operating system file permission to manage access to the Domino database files. Option B. Implement granular access controls within the application and database ACLs, granting users only the minimum permissions necessary for their specific roles, and regularly review these permissions. Option C. Apply a single, highly restrictive access level to all users, prioritizing absolute data lockdown over functional access. Option D. Grant all users full access to the database to ensure everyone can retrieve information without delay. The correct answer is B. Implement granular access controls within the application and database ACLs, granting users only the minimum permissions necessary for their specific roles, and regularly review these permissions. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise IT environments, balancing the need for robust security and compliance with the practicalities of user access and system performance. The introduction of a new Domino 8.5 application with sensitive data necessitates a thorough review of access control mechanisms. The professional challenge lies in designing an access control strategy that is both compliant with IBM's recommended practices for Domino 8.5 security and the organization's internal policies, while also ensuring that legitimate users can perform their duties efficiently without compromising data integrity or confidentiality. Failure to adequately address these aspects can lead to security breaches, compliance violations, and user dissatisfaction. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a multi-layered security strategy that leverages Domino's built-in security features, such as access control lists, ACL, at the database level, and potentially more granular controls within the application itself. This aligns with IBM's best practices for securing Lotus Notes and Domino environments, which emphasize the principle of least privilege. By granting users only the necessary permissions to perform their specific tasks, the risk of unauthorized access or data modification is minimized. This approach also facilitates easier auditing and compliance reporting, as access rights are clearly defined and managed. Furthermore, it allows for the segregation of duties, a key tenet of good internal control. Incorrect approaches analysis. Granting all users full access to the database is a significant security and compliance failure. This violates the principle of least privilege, exposing sensitive data to unauthorized viewing, modification, or deletion by individuals who do not require such access. It creates a broad attack surface and makes it impossible to track who performs specific actions, hindering any forensic investigation or audit. This approach is fundamentally incompatible with any reasonable security policy or regulatory requirement for data protection. Implementing a single, overly restrictive access level for all users, even if intended to be secure, can be equally problematic. While it might prevent unauthorized access, it can also impede legitimate business operations. If users cannot access the data or functionalities they need to perform their jobs, productivity will suffer, leading to workarounds that bypass security controls, ultimately creating new vulnerabilities. This approach fails to balance security with usability and business needs, which is a critical aspect of effective system configuration. Relying solely on operating system-level permissions to control access to the Domino database files is an inadequate and incorrect approach. Domino's security model is designed to operate at the application and database level, providing granular control over user access to specific documents, views, and fields. Operating system permissions are too coarse-grained and do not account for the internal security mechanisms of Domino. This method would not prevent authenticated notes users from accessing data they shouldn't, nor would it allow for the fine-tuning of permissions required for effective application security. It bypasses the intended security framework of Domino entirely. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach access control design by first understanding the data sensitivity and the specific business functions that the application supports. This involves consulting with business stakeholders to identify user roles and their corresponding access requirements. The next step is to map these requirements to Domino's security features, prioritizing the principle of least privilege. This means starting with the most restrictive access and incrementally granting permissions as needed, always documenting the rationale for each permission granted. Regular reviews of access rights are crucial to ensure they remain appropriate as roles and responsibilities evolve. Compliance with relevant data protection regulations and internal security policies must be a guiding principle throughout the process. Question 11. Compliance review shows that a newly deployed IBM Lotus Notes and Domino 8.5 server has been configured with minimal security settings to facilitate immediate user access. Which of the following actions represents the most appropriate next step to ensure the server's security posture aligns with organizational policies and best practices? Option A. Grant all users who require access to specific databases full administrative rights to those databases to simplify ongoing management and access. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive audit of the Domino server's security configuration, including server documents, Domino directory security settings, and database access control lists, to verify adherence to established security policies and the principle of least privilege. Option C. Implement additional network firewalls around the Domino server to create a more secure perimeter, assuming that application-level security can be addressed later. Option D. Rely on the default security settings provided with the Domino 8.5 installation, as these are generally considered secure for initial deployment. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive audit of the Domino server's security configuration, including server documents, Domino directory security settings, and database access control lists, to verify adherence to established security policies and the principle of least privilege. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise IT environments where security policies, particularly those related to data access and user authentication, must be rigorously applied across a distributed system like IBM Lotus Notes and Domino. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for robust security with the operational requirements of user access and system administration. Misinterpreting or misapplying security configurations can lead to significant vulnerabilities, data breaches, or operational disruptions, all of which have compliance implications. The need for a deep understanding of the specific security mechanisms within Domino 8.5 and their interaction with organizational policies is paramount. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the Domino server's security configuration files, specifically the server document and the relevant security settings within the Domino directory names. NSF. This includes examining the access control lists, ACL, for databases, the server's security settings, e.g., anonymous access authentication methods, and any specific security policies applied to users or groups. For the exam's jurisdiction, implied to be U.S.-centric for IT certifications, unless otherwise specified. focusing on general IT best practices and common regulatory principles like data privacy and access control. This aligns with principles of least privilege and secure configuration. Best professional practice dictates verifying that the system adheres to documented security policies and industry standards for access control and data protection. This proactive verification ensures that only authorized users have access to sensitive information and that the system is protected against unauthorized access. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to rely solely on the default security settings of a newly installed Domino 8.5 server. Default settings are often designed for ease of installation rather than optimal security, and may not align with an organization's specific security posture or regulatory requirements. Failure to customize security configurations leaves the system vulnerable to common attack vectors and violates the principle of secure by design. Another incorrect approach would be to assume that network-level security measures, e.g., firewalls, are sufficient to protect Domino data. While network security is important, it does not replace the need for granular access control within the Domino application itself. Data within Domino databases can still be accessed by authenticated users with excessive privileges, even if the server is protected by a firewall. This oversight can lead to internal data breaches and non-compliance with data privacy regulations. A third incorrect approach would be to grant broad administrative privileges to all users who require access to specific databases, without a clear justification or audit trail. This violates the principle of least privilege, a cornerstone of secure system administration. It increases the risk of accidental or malicious modification or deletion of data, and makes it difficult to track who performed specific actions, hindering forensic investigations and compliance audits. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach security configuration by first understanding the organization's security policies and any relevant regulatory mandates. This understanding should then be translated into specific Domino security settings. A systematic approach involving documentation review, configuration verification, and regular audits is essential. When faced with a new installation or a security review, the decision-making process should prioritize identifying potential risks, understanding the impact of each configuration setting, and implementing controls that align with the principle of least privilege and defense in depth. This involves asking, does this configuration meet our security policy? And does it protect against known threats while allowing necessary operations? Question 12. Assessment of the most effective and secure method for managing administrative access to IBM Lotus Notes and Domino 8.5 servers, considering the need to control both user ID creation/modification and server configuration settings. What approach best upholds security best practices and regulatory compliance principles? Option A. Implement a role-based access control system that assigns distinct administrative roles for user ID management and server configuration, ensuring each role has only the necessary privileges. Option B. Rely solely on strong password policies for all administrative accounts, allowing any administrator with a strong password to manage both user ID and server configurations. Option C. Grant a single, highly trusted administrator full administrative rights to manage both user ID and all server configurations to streamline operations. Option D. Delegate user ID management to a separate IT department that does not have direct access to server configuration consoles. The correct answer is A. Implement a role-based access control system that assigns distinct administrative roles for user ID management and server configuration, ensuring each role has only the necessary privileges. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise IT environments, balancing the need for robust security and compliance with the practicalities of user access and system administration. The core of the challenge lies in interpreting and applying the principles of least privilege and segregation of duties within the context of IBM Lotus Notes and Domino 8.5 administration, specifically concerning the management of user ID and server access. The correct approach, which involves establishing distinct administrative roles with carefully defined permissions for managing user ID and server configurations, represents best professional practice because it directly aligns with fundamental security principles mandated by IT governance frameworks. The principle of least privilege ensures that administrators only have the access necessary to perform their specific duties. thereby minimizing the attack surface and the potential for accidental or malicious misuse of elevated privileges. Segregation of duties prevents a single individual from having the ability to compromise system integrity or commit fraud by controlling both the creation/modification of user identities and the configuration of the servers that process those identities. This layered security approach is crucial for maintaining data integrity, confidentiality, and availability, which are often subject to regulatory scrutiny in various industries. An incorrect approach that grants a single administrator full control over both user ID management and server configuration is professionally unacceptable due to significant regulatory and ethical failures. This approach violates the principle of least privilege, exposing the system to undue risk. If this administrator's account is compromised, an attacker would gain comprehensive control over user identities and server settings, enabling widespread damage. Ethically, it represents a failure to implement adequate internal controls, which could lead to severe consequences for the organization, including data breaches, financial losses, and reputational damage. Furthermore, depending on the industry and specific regulations, e.g., SOX in the US, GDPR in Europe, though not specified here, the principles are universal for robust IT security. Such a configuration could lead to non-compliance penalties and legal liabilities. Another incorrect approach, such as relying solely on password complexity for user ID management without role-based access control for server administration, is also professionally flawed. While strong passwords are a necessary component of security, they do not address the fundamental issue of privilege escalation. A highly privileged administrator with weak password controls is still a significant risk. This approach fails to implement a layered security strategy and neglects the critical aspect of segregating administrative functions. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough risk assessment, followed by the design and implementation of a security architecture that adheres to established best practices. This includes 1. Identifying critical administrative functions, e.g., user creation, server configuration, database access control. 2. Defining distinct roles based on these functions. 3. Assigning granular permissions to each role, adhering to the principle of least privilege. 4. Implementing segregation of duties by ensuring no single role encompasses conflicting critical functions. 5. Regularly reviewing and auditing administrative access and permissions to ensure ongoing compliance and security. 6. Documenting all security policies and procedures. Question 13. Comparative studies suggest that when migrating from an older version of IBM Lotus Notes/Domino to a newer release, the most effective strategy for ensuring data integrity and minimizing operational disruption involves a multi-stage process. Considering the potential for data loss and security vulnerabilities, which of the following approaches best aligns with professional best practices and robust risk management principles for such a migration? Option A. Proceed with the migration without performing any backups, relying on the stability of the new Domino version to prevent data loss. Option B. Prioritize the migration of user mail files only, assuming that server configurations will automatically adapt to the new version. Option C. Perform a full backup of all Domino data and server configurations, verify the integrity of the backups, and then conduct a pilot migration with a select group of users and applications before proceeding with a full rollout. Option D. Immediately initiate an in-place upgrade of all Domino servers to the new version, followed by a user-level data migration. The correct answer is D. Immediately initiate an in-place upgrade of all Domino servers to the new version, followed by a user-level data migration. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise IT environments where a company is migrating from an older version of IBM Lotus Notes/Domino to a newer one. The professional challenge lies in ensuring data integrity, security, and compliance with established organizational policies and potentially industry-specific regulations during the migration process. The need for careful judgment arises from the potential for data loss, security vulnerabilities, and disruption to business operations if the migration is not executed correctly. The decision-making process must balance technical feasibility with business continuity and risk management. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased migration strategy that prioritizes data backup and verification. This aligns with best practices for system upgrades and is implicitly supported by general IT governance principles that emphasize data protection and minimizing downtime. Specifically, backing up all critical Domino data databases, mail files, configuration files, before initiating any migration steps is paramount. Verifying the integrity of these backups ensures that a recovery point exists in case of unforeseen issues. Following this with a pilot migration on a subset of users or applications allows for testing the new environment, identifying potential compatibility issues, and refining the migration process before a full rollout. This methodical approach minimizes risk and ensures a smoother transition, which is a cornerstone of professional IT management. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that skips the backup and verification phase before migration is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It directly violates the principle of data stewardship and risk management. In the context of IBM Lotus, Notes/Domino, mail files and databases often contain sensitive business and personal information. Failure to back up this data before a major system change could lead to irreversible data loss, which has severe implications for business operations and could violate data privacy regulations if personal data is compromised. Another incorrect approach is to attempt a direct in-place upgrade of all servers simultaneously without a pilot phase. This is professionally unsound because it exposes the entire organization to the risk of widespread failure. If the upgrade encounters critical issues, all users and services could be affected, leading to significant business disruption and potential financial losses. This lack of risk mitigation demonstrates poor professional judgment and a disregard for business continuity planning. Finally, an approach that focuses solely on migrating mail files and neglects critical Domino server configuration files and application databases is incomplete and risky. Domino servers rely on a complex interplay of configuration settings and application data. Ignoring these aspects can lead to a non-functional or insecure Domino environment post-migration, even if mail files are successfully transferred. This oversight can lead to compliance issues if applications are critical for regulatory reporting or business processes. Professional reasoning. Professionals undertaking such migrations should adopt a structured, risk-averse approach. This involves thorough planning, including understanding the specific requirements of the new Domino version and the existing environment. A critical step is to develop a comprehensive backup and recovery plan, ensuring that all essential data is protected and can be restored. Implementing a phased rollout, starting with a pilot group, is crucial for validating the migration process and identifying potential problems in a controlled manner. Continuous monitoring and testing throughout the migration are also essential. Professionals should always prioritize data integrity, security, and business continuity, adhering to organizational policies and any relevant industry standards or regulations. Question 14. Stakeholder feedback indicates that users are experiencing intermittent delays when accessing specific shared mail databases, leading to frustration and decreased productivity. The current Domino server configuration utilizes a default security setting for database access. What is the most appropriate course of action to address this issue while maintaining robust security? Option A. Immediately disable all advanced security features for the affected databases to eliminate any potential performance overhead. Option B. Review and adjust the database access control lists, ACL, to grant appropriate levels of access to users who frequently access these databases, while ensuring that no unnecessary privileges are granted. Option C. Implement a blanket policy to restrict access to all shared mail databases to only administrators to prevent any potential misuse. Option D. Increase the Domino server's processing power and memory allocation without investigating the specific cause of the access delays. The correct answer is B. Review and adjust the database access control lists, ACL, to grant appropriate levels of access to users who frequently access these databases, while ensuring that no unnecessary privileges are granted. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT administration, balancing security requirements with user productivity and system performance. Professional challenge lies in interpreting and applying the IBM Lotus Notes and Domino 8.5 security guidelines and best practices, which are implicitly governed by the need to maintain data integrity and prevent unauthorized access without unduly hindering legitimate business operations. The exams focus on installation and configuration, implies a need to understand how these security measures are implemented at a foundational level. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the identified security vulnerability by implementing a robust, multi-layered security strategy that aligns with the principles of least privilege and defense in depth, as expected within the context of IBM Lotus Notes and Domino 8. 5. Security configurations. This approach prioritizes mitigating risks while ensuring that necessary access is still granted through controlled mechanisms, reflecting a thorough understanding of the system's security architecture and its implications for data protection. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on disabling security features without a comprehensive risk assessment would be professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a disregard for the fundamental security principles embedded within the Lotus Notes and Domino framework, potentially exposing the organization to data breaches, unauthorized modifications, or denial of service attacks. Such an action would violate the implicit ethical obligation to protect organizational data and systems. Another incorrect approach that involves implementing overly restrictive security measures without considering user workflows or business needs would also be professionally unsound. This demonstrates a lack of understanding of the practical implications of security configurations on user productivity and could lead to workarounds that bypass intended security controls, ultimately undermining the security posture. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a thorough assessment of the reported issue, a review of relevant IBM Lotus Notes and Domino 8, 5 security documentation and best practices, and a risk-benefit analysis of potential solutions. This includes understanding the potential impact of any configuration change on system security, performance, and user experience, and consulting with relevant stakeholders to ensure all perspectives are considered before implementing any changes. Question 15. To address the challenge of ensuring appropriate access to sensitive customer data stored in a critical IBM Lotus Notes/Domino database while maintaining operational efficiency, which of the following configuration strategies for the database's access control list, ACL, would represent the most secure and professionally sound approach? Option A. Removing all explicit user entries from the ACL and relying solely on the public access setting to grant necessary permissions. Option B. Implementing granular access controls within the ACL, assigning specific roles e.g., reader, author, editor, to individual users or carefully defined groups based on their documented job functions and the principle of least privilege. Option C. Assigning the manager role to a broad group of departmental administrators who have general oversight responsibilities for data within their respective areas. Option D. Setting the default user access level to editor to allow all authenticated users to modify records as needed, simplifying data entry and updates. Correct answer is C. Assigning the manager role to a broad group of departmental administrators who have general oversight responsibilities for data within their respective areas. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise IT environments, managing the security and accessibility of sensitive data stored within IBM Lotus Notes/Domino databases. The core of the challenge lies in balancing robust security measures with the legitimate need for users to access information required for their job functions. This requires a nuanced understanding of Domino's security architecture, particularly its access control lists, ACL, and the implications of different access levels. Misconfigurations can lead to either data breaches or operational inefficiencies, both of which have significant professional and potential regulatory ramifications, even if specific regulations are not explicitly detailed in the exam syllabus. The underlying principles of data protection and responsible system administration are universally applicable. The correct approach involves a systematic and principle-based method for reviewing and adjusting database ACLs. This method prioritizes understanding the data's sensitivity, the roles of users accessing it, and the principle of least privilege. By granting only the necessary access rights, organizations minimize the attack surface and reduce the risk of unauthorized disclosure or modification of sensitive information. This aligns with best practices in information security and responsible system administration, ensuring data integrity and confidentiality. Incorrect approaches often stem from a lack of thorough analysis or a misunderstanding of Domino's security model. Granting broad access levels like manager or designer to a wide range of users without a clear business justification is a significant security risk. This violates the principle of least privilege and increases the likelihood of accidental or malicious data alteration or deletion. Similarly, relying solely on group memberships without granular control within the ACL can lead to over-provisioning of access. These actions can lead to compliance issues if data protection policies are in place, and certainly represent a failure in professional due diligence. Professionals should approach such tasks by first identifying the specific databases and the data they contain. Then, they must clearly define the user roles and their corresponding access requirements. This involves consulting with data owners and business stakeholders. The principle of least privilege should guide the configuration of ACL entries, ensuring that each user or group is granted only the minimum permissions necessary to perform their duties. Regular audits of ACLs are also crucial to maintain security posture and adapt to changing organizational needs. Question 16. Cost-benefit analysis shows that upgrading to IBM Lotus Domino 8.5 offers significant performance enhancements and new features, but initial testing reveals compatibility issues with a critical legacy application. The project timeline is tight, and the business unit is pressuring for immediate deployment. What is the most professional and compliant course of action? Option A. Implement a phased upgrade strategy, isolating the legacy application in a separate Domino 8.5 environment for further testing and developing a workaround or migration plan for its data and functionality before integrating it into the main upgraded environment. Option B. Halt the Domino 8.5 upgrade entirely and revert to the previous version, citing the compatibility issues as a showstopper without further investigation into potential solutions. Option C. Deploy Domino 8.5 as planned and immediately escalate the legacy application compatibility issue to the vendor for a complete resolution, without performing any internal validation of their proposed fixes. Option D. Proceed with the Domino 8.5 upgrade across all servers immediately, deferring the resolution of the legacy application's compatibility issues until after the deployment, and relying on manual workarounds for affected users. The correct answer is A. Implement a phased upgrade strategy, isolating the legacy application in a separate Domino 8.5 environment for further testing and developing a workaround or migration plan for its data and functionality before integrating it into the main upgraded environment. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT administration, balancing the immediate need for system functionality with long-term security and compliance requirements. The professional challenge lies in making a decision that is technically sound, cost-effective, and adheres to the regulatory framework governing IBM Lotus Notes and Domino 8.5 installations and configurations. The specific jurisdiction for this exam is not explicitly stated, but for the purpose of this question, we will assume a general IT best practice framework that aligns with common regulatory principles regarding data security and system integrity, applicable in many business environments. The correct approach prioritizes a phased, controlled rollout of the Domino 8.5 upgrade, incorporating thorough testing and validation against established security policies and compliance mandates. This aligns with professional best practices by minimizing risk, ensuring data integrity, and maintaining a secure operational environment. It demonstrates a commitment to due diligence, a core tenet of responsible system administration. An incorrect approach that bypasses security validation for speed would be professionally unacceptable. It directly violates the principle of least privilege and could expose sensitive data to unauthorized access, leading to potential regulatory penalties and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach that involves a full, unmanaged rollback without proper analysis of the root cause of the upgrade failure would be inefficient and could lead to recurring issues, demonstrating a lack of systematic problem-solving. A third incorrect approach that relies solely on vendor support without internal validation would abdicate responsibility and could result in a solution that doesn't fully meet the organization's specific security and operational needs. The professional decision-making process should involve a structured risk assessment, clear communication with stakeholders, adherence to change management protocols, and a commitment to thorough testing and validation before and after any system modification. This ensures that decisions are informed, justifiable, and aligned with both business objectives and regulatory obligations. Question 17. The audit findings indicate that several Lotus Domino 8.5 databases have overly permissive access control lists, ACL, allowing users with broader roles than necessary to access sensitive information. The audit report specifically flags the potential for unauthorized data disclosure due to these configurations. As the Domino administrator, what is the most appropriate course of action to address these findings and enhance data security? Option A. Disable advanced ACL features across all databases to simplify management and eliminate the possibility of misconfiguration, thereby preventing future audit findings. Option B. Request the auditors to reevaluate their findings, as the current ACL settings have been in place for a significant period without reported incidents. Option C. Review each database's ACL, identify users and roles with excessive privileges, and implement the principle of least privilege by assigning the minimum necessary access rights for each user and role. Option D. Immediately remove all users from the ACLs of databases flagged by the audit and instruct users to request access on a case-by-case basis through a less formal process. The correct answer is C. Review each database's ACL, identify users and roles with excessive privileges, and implement the principle of least privilege by assigning the minimum necessary access rights for each user and role. Explanation. The audit findings indicate a potential misconfiguration of Domino server security settings, specifically related to access control lists (ACL), and their impact on data confidentiality and integrity. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the administrator to balance operational efficiency with stringent security requirements, all while adhering to the specific guidelines and best practices mandated by the C2040-925 exam's implied regulatory framework, which focuses on IBM Lotus Notes and Domino 8.5 administration. The core of the challenge lies in interpreting audit findings and translating them into actionable security configurations without introducing new vulnerabilities or hindering legitimate user access. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the audit findings by implementing granular access controls that align with the principle of least privilege. This involves a thorough review of existing ACLs, identifying overly permissive settings, and rectifying them to ensure that only authorized users and servers have access to specific databases and their contents. This meticulous process minimizes the risk of unauthorized data access, modification, or deletion, thereby upholding data integrity and confidentiality. Such a practice is crucial for maintaining compliance with internal security policies and any relevant data protection regulations that would be implicitly covered by the exam scope. An incorrect approach that involves simply disabling all advanced ACL features to avoid potential misconfigurations is professionally unacceptable. This is because it sacrifices essential security controls for the sake of expediency, directly violating the principle of least privilege and potentially exposing sensitive data to unauthorized access. This approach fails to address the root cause of the audit findings and creates a broader security risk. Another incorrect approach, such as ignoring the audit findings due to perceived complexity or time constraints, is a severe ethical and professional failure. It demonstrates a disregard for security responsibilities and exposes the organization to significant risks, including data breaches, reputational damage, and potential regulatory penalties. This inaction directly contravenes the administrator's duty to maintain a secure and compliant Domino environment. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic approach. First, thoroughly understand the audit findings and their implications. Second, consult relevant documentation and best practices for IBM Lotus Notes and Domino 8.5 security configurations. Third, develop a plan to address the identified issues, prioritizing critical vulnerabilities. Fourth, implement changes in a controlled manner, ideally in a test environment before deploying to production. Fifth, thoroughly test the implemented changes to ensure they resolve the identified issues without introducing new problems. Finally, document all changes and conduct regular security reviews to maintain a robust security posture. Question 18. The evaluation methodology shows that a newly appointed IBM Lotus Domino 8.5 administrator, tasked with improving server response times, decides to disable several security settings within the Domino directory names NSF that they believe are causing performance bottlenecks. They make these changes directly on the production server without consulting existing documentation or seeking approval from their supervisor. Which of the following actions best represents the correct professional approach to addressing potential performance issues while maintaining security and compliance? Option A. Immediately revert the security settings to their previous state and then consult the official IBM Lotus Domino 8.5 administration guides to understand the purpose and impact of each security setting before proposing any performance-related changes. Option B. Document the changes made and the perceived performance improvements, then proceed to implement further optimizations based on the administrator's intuition. Option C. Research common Domino performance tuning tips on unofficial online forums and apply the most frequently suggested changes to the server's security configurations. Option D. Inform the supervisor about the changes made and the observed performance improvements, and request guidance on how to further optimize the server without compromising security. The correct answer is A. Immediately revert the security settings to their previous state and then consult the official IBM Lotus Domino 8.5 administration guides to understand the purpose and impact of each security setting before proposing any performance-related changes. Explanation. The evaluation methodology shows that understanding the nuances of Domino server security configurations is paramount for maintaining data integrity and compliance. This scenario presents a common challenge where a new administrator, eager to improve performance, makes changes without fully grasping the security implications. The professional challenge lies in balancing performance optimization with the absolute necessity of adhering to established security protocols and the specific regulatory framework governing data handling within the exam's jurisdiction. The correct approach involves a systematic, documented process of testing and validation before implementing any changes that could impact security. This aligns with best professional practices by ensuring that any modifications are understood, approved, and do not introduce vulnerabilities. Specifically, within the context of IBM Lotus Notes and Domino 8.5, this means consulting the official IBM documentation, understanding the security implications of each parameter, and potentially performing changes in a controlled test environment before production deployment. This methodical approach minimizes risk and demonstrates due diligence, which is critical for regulatory compliance and maintaining system integrity. An incorrect approach of directly modifying server security settings without prior analysis or testing is professionally unacceptable. This action demonstrates a disregard for established security best practices and the potential for introducing vulnerabilities that could lead to data breaches or unauthorized access. Such a failure could have significant regulatory repercussions, depending on the specific data being handled and the applicable laws within the exam's jurisdiction, potentially leading to fines, legal action, and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach, that of relying solely on anecdotal advice from colleagues without verifying it against official documentation or understanding the underlying principles, also represents a failure in professional due diligence. This can lead to the implementation of insecure configurations that may appear to work, but are fundamentally flawed from a security standpoint, again risking regulatory noncompliance. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of the system's current configuration, a clear definition of the desired outcome, and a comprehensive review of all potential impacts, especially security and compliance. Before making any changes, administrators should consult official documentation, consider the regulatory environment, and, if possible, test changes in a non-production environment. A change management process, including proper documentation and approval, is essential to ensure accountability and minimize risk. Question 19. Consider a scenario where a department manager requests full administrative access to a specific Lotus Domino database to streamline reporting processes. The administrator is aware that this database contains sensitive customer information and that the manager has no prior administrative experience with Domino. The manager has emphasized the urgency of their request. What is the most appropriate course of action for the administrator? Option A. Grant the manager full administrative access to the database, documenting the request and the urgency to ensure business continuity and meet the manager's immediate needs. Option B. Grant the manager read-only access to the database, as this is a safe default for reporting purposes, and inform them that this is the maximum access available without further justification. Option C. Investigate the manager's specific reporting needs, review the principle of least privilege, and configure the minimum necessary permissions for the manager to perform their reporting tasks, documenting the justification and the granted access. Option D. Deny the request outright, citing the sensitivity of the data and the manager's lack of experience, and inform the manager that no access will be granted. Correct answer is A. Grant the manager full administrative access to the database, documenting the request and the urgency, to ensure business continuity and meet the manager's immediate needs. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT administration, balancing user access needs with security and compliance requirements. The administrator must make a decision that impacts data accessibility for a critical business function, while adhering to established security policies and potentially regulatory mandates. Though specific regulations are not detailed in this exam scope, the principle of secure data handling is paramount. The challenge lies in the potential for unauthorized access or data leakage if permissions are too broad, versus hindering legitimate business operations if they are too restrictive. The need for a documented and justifiable decision-making process is crucial. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the user's role, the sensitivity of the data they need to access, and the principle of least privilege. This means granting only the minimum necessary permissions for the user to perform their job functions. This aligns with best practices in information security and is a foundational concept for maintaining data integrity and confidentiality. By documenting the request, the justification for the granted access, and the specific permissions assigned, the administrator creates an audit trail. This audit trail is vital for demonstrating compliance with internal policies and for troubleshooting any future security incidents. It ensures accountability and transparency in access management. Incorrect approaches analysis. Granting broad administrative access without a clear business justification or a review of the principle of least privilege is a significant security risk. This approach violates the fundamental tenet of limiting access to only what is necessary, increasing the potential for accidental or malicious data modification or deletion. It also creates an unnecessary attack surface. Fulfilling the request solely based on the user's seniority or perceived importance, without a technical assessment of their actual data access needs, is an arbitrary decision. This bypasses the necessary due diligence and can lead to inappropriate access levels, compromising data security and potentially violating internal policies regarding access control. Ignoring the request due to a lack of immediate understanding of the specific data involved, without attempting to gather more information or consult with relevant stakeholders, is a failure to support legitimate business operations. While caution is necessary, outright refusal without investigation can impede productivity and indicate a lack of proactive problem solving. This approach does not demonstrate a commitment to enabling users while maintaining security. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach access requests by first understanding the business need. This involves asking clarifying questions about the specific data required and the tasks the user needs to perform. Next, they should consult established security policies and the principle of least privilege. If the request aligns with these principles, the administrator should then configure the minimum necessary permissions. All access grants should be documented, including the request, the justification, and the specific permissions assigned. If the request deviates from policy or poses a security risk, the administrator should communicate this clearly, explain the reasoning, and propose alternative solutions that meet both security and business needs. Question 20. The investigation demonstrates that an IBM Lotus Domino 8.5 server is experiencing intermittent performance degradation, impacting user access to mail and applications. The system administrator has received several user complaints and observed increased CPU utilization on the server. The administrator needs to identify the cause and implement a solution efficiently and effectively. Which of the following actions represents the most professional and compliant approach to resolving this issue? Option A. Wait for the performance issue to become critical and cause a complete system outage before initiating a full investigation. Option B. Immediately restart the Domino server and monitor performance, as this often resolves transient issues. Option C. Apply a configuration change that was recently discussed on an industry forum as a potential fix for similar performance problems, without further testing. Option D. Consult the official IBM Lotus notes in Domino 8.5 documentation and utilize the Domino console commands and log files to diagnose the root cause before implementing any changes. The correct answer is B. Immediately restart the Domino server and monitor performance, as this often resolves transient issues. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT administration where a critical system component, the Domino server, is experiencing performance degradation. The professional is tasked with diagnosing and resolving the issue under pressure, with potential business impact. The challenge lies in balancing the urgency of the situation with the need for a systematic, compliant, and secure approach to troubleshooting. Rushing to implement unverified solutions could lead to further system instability, data corruption, or security breaches, all of which have significant operational and potentially regulatory implications. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a methodical investigation that prioritizes understanding the root cause before implementing any changes. This aligns with best practices for system administration, and by extension, the principles of responsible data handling and system integrity that underpin regulatory compliance. Specifically, consulting the official IBM Lotus notes in Domino 8.5 documentation and utilizing built-in diagnostic tools like the Domino console commands and log files are the most professional and compliant methods. These resources provide accurate, vendor-supported information and diagnostic capabilities, minimizing the risk of introducing new problems or violating any implicit or explicit guidelines related to system maintenance and data security. This approach ensures that any actions taken are informed, documented, and traceable, which is crucial for auditability and adherence to operational standards. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing a solution based on anecdotal evidence from an online forum without verification is professionally unsound. This approach bypasses established diagnostic procedures and relies on potentially outdated, incorrect, or even malicious advice. Such actions could lead to system instability, data loss, or security vulnerabilities, which could have downstream regulatory consequences if they impact data integrity or availability. Furthermore, it demonstrates a failure to follow vendor-supported best practices. Applying a fix suggested by a colleague without understanding its impact is also problematic. While collegial advice can be valuable, it must be vetted. Without understanding the rationale or potential side effects, implementing such a fix is akin to guesswork. This can lead to unintended consequences, similar to the forum approach, and represents a failure in due diligence and a lack of systematic problem-solving. Ignoring the issue until it escalates significantly is a failure to meet professional responsibilities. Proactive problem-solving and timely intervention are essential for maintaining system stability and preventing business disruption. Allowing a critical issue to worsen can lead to more severe consequences, including data loss or extended downtime, which could have regulatory implications depending on the nature of the data and the business operations. This approach demonstrates a lack of accountability and foresight. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing system performance issues should adopt a structured troubleshooting methodology. This typically involves 1. Problem identification. Clearly define the symptoms and scope of the issue. 2. Information gathering. Collect relevant data from system logs, monitoring tools, and user reports. 3. Hypothesis generation. Formulate potential causes based on the gathered information. 4. Testing and verification. Systematically test hypotheses using documented and approved methods, prioritizing vendor-supported tools and documentation. 5. Solution implementation. Apply the confirmed solution, documenting all steps. 6. Validation. Confirm that the solution has resolved the issue without introducing new problems. 7. Documentation. Record the entire process, including the problem, diagnosis, solution, and outcome. This systematic approach ensures that actions are informed, effective, and minimize risk, aligning with professional standards and any applicable operational guidelines.